Hey Brickmaniacs, we're back with the USS Macon Island after our road trip all across the country. So as you can see, it's still kind of in pieces, but we've got it back here at the HQ. Going to take a look at some of the new digital instructions dropping tomorrow, but first things first, we got a new intro on our channel that we're testing out, so make sure to drop a comment and leave some feedback. Check it out. All right, let's talk some castles here with Dan Siskin. We've got a lot of classic Brickmania builds sitting in front of us. Some of these have already been released on digital instructions. Some of them are to be released. Other ones of them are still a little ways out. But we got Dan joining us here because we're back off the road from Brick Fair and Brick Days and all that fun stuff. So we thought we'd sit down and take a closer look at some of this awesome medieval stuff. I think people will recognize the Blacksmith Shop, Dan.
Yeah, this is the original, actually. So people may have the Blacksmith Shop from Lego. I managed to get a hold of my original, what was left of my original prototype that my friends in the local train club managed to salvage it from all those years ago. So I put it back together, and this is the original. I had to refer back to it when I were making some instructions. So, I decided to put it together and as best as I could with the parts that I had. It's not 100% accurate to the original, but it's closer to what I intended to have as a kit than what the Lego set finally ended up being. So.
Yeah, sure.
So there's like 23 of those out there in the world that are actual original Brickmania sets, and I've seen people show off their original. There's still a couple people who still have them sealed from. That's like more than 20 years ago. So that's kind of amazing. But I managed to get the prototype. I never actually had one of these. A lot of these things they existed only in prototypes, and I made the kits, and then, I never really thought about saving one for myself. So.
Well, and just behind it there we have the Windmill, which this is actually the official download that you can get the Blacksmith Shop bundled with. But that's hush hush on the DL.
Yeah. So this is the original. This is one of the original 5 sets that I had envisioned when I was starting to do castle sets. We have 4 of the original 5 here. The only one we're missing is the church, which has been destroyed and rebuilt into something else, and is actually probably at this point part of the Missouri. So
sure, there you go.
So the parts. So this is kind of a cool set. It's kind of an underrated. I think I only made like 10 of these, and I was limited by this goofy base plate. So I had I bought some castle sets used and not used, unopened actually. From back in the day, took apart these classic castle sets and made what I consider something cooler out of them. So this is the original prototype. So again, the castle walls, these are like some old ninja castles which were available at the time. They don't match the 2 sides, but hey, it's prototype.
Yeah, right.
If you bought the kit from me, you would have had matching pieces. But one thing that's kind of cool about this, I don't even remember how it opens, but the whole thing, yeah, here we go.
Wow.
It opens up and it actually works. So if you turn the mill blades, the grinding wheels go. And you can actually turn, there's a little knob in the back. I don't know if the rubber band's probably gotten dry. You can actually rotate the top of the windmill around. So it does have the grindstone. There's a little barrel that the grains go into. And this is actually modeled off of a real mill. So that I looking through like drawings of medieval mills, this one's kind of unique in that only the top rotates. A lot of them, the whole building would rotate. Like the classic like Dutch one in the countryside, the whole building kind of rotates. And the one I was copying, only the top portion of it rotated.
Follows the wind, I suppose.
Right, and they could rotate it into the wind. So it always have, or either in. I don't know if they're facing the wind or if the wind would go past it. I imagine they face the wind. But yeah, that's a classic Brickmania set. The piece that you're going to have, if you're making the instructions or making it from the instructions, this piece right here, you're going to have a hard time finding it new. You're going to have to find it used, but they are out there. Everything here is out, it's available.
Just got to scour Bricklink. Well, next to it, so this is the one, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the only building that you decided to do 2 different versions of.
This was the original Blacksmith Shop. It's interesting. The kit never had these tiles around it. So this must have been on a mock somewhere with a curb. But yeah, this was number 2. So the Blacksmith Shop was number 1. I believe the Crossroads Tavern was what the castle version was called, was number 2. The mill was number 3. And there is a alternate version of this that was you could buy either one or the other. You could buy the Crossroads Tavern. I don't remember if it was an add-on or if it was actually a separate kit. I believe it was
Salty Anchor, right?
I believe it was an add-on. You had to buy this one to get the Salty I don't, you know, somebody who has that.
It was a while ago.
Yeah, so there's only 4 of the pirate one, the salty anchor. It had a big blue anchor. I don't remember which set that came with, but back in the day there was no Bricklink, so I actually had to buy sets at the stores and get parts to make what I'm doing, and sometimes I'd have to like scour like discounters or people that sold like, you know, even like people that sold like you know, ancient sets, you know, like they would be vintage sets. I'd be paying top dollar taking those sets apart and turning them into what I consider something bigger and better. But they were expensive. So people, you know, they think that our sets were expensive now. You know, that's not just now. They've always been this way. There's always been a premium thing. Always had to do all this extra work to get these sets. This being the prototype, it has all sorts of pieces that are discolored. This is like parts from my childhood. You know, I didn't go out and buy pieces to make this stuff. I was doing this as spare time in my basement, you know, as a hobby. Never intended to like actually make a living out of doing this, but lo and behold, it ended up working out that way. Let's see.
Well, now people get the chance.
Look,
to be able
most
to
of the
put
stuff
these
is
things
actually still inside.
Yeah.
I haven't even opened this thing up in years, so I'm surprised as you guys are that there's actually something inside. So it didn't occur to me to look inside this thing, but look, the original bartender, all the people are still inside of there. So back in the day, for me to get figures, I'd have to like cannibalize figures from other sets. I think one of the hardest things for me to get were actually these shields that are all around.
I bet.
Like I said, there's no Bricklink. It's just like I had to collect what I could get, and I only wanted to put new condition pieces in my set. So I scoured high and low. You know, the internet was very young back then, so that wasn't much of a help. I was actually going to retail stores, finding places that might have some vintage sets still for sale, like hardware stores and stuff that just, you know, off the beaten path. And this is what I came up with. I remember taking a trip up to Duluth and just emptying out their store, the Duluth toy store, because like nobody, you know, people had been in there. They didn't know what, you know, they didn't know what they were looking at. So
I can use these pieces.
these are vintage castle sets. I'm taking them. I mean, they, you know, in my opinion, they weren't very good sets because the best sets had come out in the '80s, and you know, the '80s and maybe the early '90s, and I started this in the late '90s. So I was like, you know, at the time there were no castle sets coming out. There was some of the samurai castle, that sort of ninja samurai era, and Time Twisters had a few castle pieces in it. So that's where I was getting a few pieces here and there, but there just wasn't a Lego castle set. The well had gone dry. I think the Lion King, I think, whatever, the set with the guy with the lion, is just big blue castle, which a lot of these roof pieces and stuff would have came out of those sets. But yeah, it just dried up. There's just no castle available at the time I started this.
Well, and I think it's cool how well these have stood the test of time, because even with you know, modern day pieces, etc., you still see a lot of builds like this, you know, at shows, etc., and be super impressed by them. I know that this one, the Country Farm, is the one that is actually releasing today on digital instructions, so you'll be able to get that download right now.
This was number 5. I mean, it was intended to come out with about the same time that the Guarded Church, so like that first year of medieval kits. I just could not get the parts. There's particularly these inside corner slopes that are on the roof here. They just weren't available in any kind of quantity, and I had saved up almost all the rest of it. I had to buy a bunch of other castles to get these doors. I had everything I needed, just could not get enough roof pieces. So that kind of fell by the wayside, never to be revisited. Which amazes me that somehow this managed to survive all these years. Like, you know, I've moved like my house like 3 times, and you know, Brickmania's kind of went into hibernation once, and somehow this thing managed to survive. It's beyond me that I don't even know where it was all this time.
Truly a relic from the past. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. I mean, I used to, my old house was like, the floor of my basement was just a giant castle village. And the castle, there was a castle that I built that was so big that I could sit inside of it. And then all this village, these are all buildings that surrounded the castle. No way that could have ever been a kit. That was way too big.
Well, and I think one that a lot of people are really excited about too is this Highland Keep, which, yes, it is on the schedule. It's not ready quite yet, but we will be putting it up on digital instructions. Obviously, you're going to have to do your own thing when it comes to these awesome minifigures that he's got spread throughout here. But man, this build, what an awesome example of something that has just really stood the test of time.
This is, well, the coolest part about this building was never the outside. I really intended to have this as part a keep. It actually has some holes in the wall where you can attach the outer walls of the keep. So it's kind of plain looking. I intended to have like trees in the courtyard and stuff. So the outside is kind of boring. And it's because it was never really meant to be a standalone kit. I was always going to make the rest of the castle. Just never got to it. This thing took months. And this was before we have a lot of like the automated software that we use now to make some of these instructions. So this is really old. This is like one of the last of the really old school sets of instructions I actually made. So we're gonna put this one up as is. I think it's good enough.
Yeah.
The quality is good enough for us to use. So it is vintage. It's not going to be like redone, like say the farm I completely remade from scratch with all today's current software. This one's going to be old, but I think it's good enough. It really stands the test of time. It's 6,600 pieces. It's going to take you a long time.
Right.
These castle walls. I mean, look how thick that wall is. It's like 3-4 bricks thick. This is done. You can't see it. It's really hard to get a camera in there. But there's a stairway that goes from the roof all the way down into through the whole castle. I mean, it really does what you're supposed to do. So it's pretty phenomenal. I really tried to do whatever I could to make it as most historically accurate to a castle. It's not a particular castle, but all the way that the building is designed, even down to that there's a well inside right down in there is a well. You'd have your household, your water supply inside the household. So
Yeah, look at that.
it was a lot of fun. All the chimneys connect to actual fireplaces, and I had a lot of fun building all these old sets.
Yeah, and I'd love to see people start decking out the interiors for themselves, etc., and kind of adding their own taste on bringing these.
Well, and you don't even have to, because the instructions have all of the details.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, all this interior detail, that's in the instructions. That's part of the set. This was not like, just get a castle. I mean, that would be boring. There's actually more pieces on the inside than there are in the whole.
Oh, that's good to know.
So yeah, I definitely spend the time and all the figures. You look at the instructions will show you what all the figures are. You're just gonna, it's big. You have to find some time to put it together. What I kind of disappointed we don't have any of the church or the Vlad's Tower, because those were pretty epic castles in their own right. But being big gray castles and me being a big shipbuilder, you can see where that led to.
Yep, those bricks have to be repurposed. I think it's still cool that we have what we have here to be able to look at. So this one over here, this is the Japanese castle, correct?
Right, and this was never actually intended to be a set. This was originally part of the GMLTC, it's Greater Midwest Lego Train Club, which I was involved with for many years. This was in their Japanese section of the big train layout, and it was actually kind of cut in half because you only saw half the castle. The rest of it, the trains had to get by it. So after we moved on from that particular train layout, I managed to salvage this castle, rebuild it so we'll put the rest of the pieces on it the way it's supposed to go. But this is a unique set that it actually has all. There's no interiors, but it is built in layers, just like the real castle. So if you were ambitious and wanted to put this together as if it was a real castle, you'd have no problem finishing it off. So all the floors do come off the way they're supposed to. This got a little bit mangled here, but yeah, I mean it was lit up at one point when it was on the train layout. But opening doors, you have these classic ninja castle doors. I mean, it had a lot of fun. This was built maybe, I want to say about 15 years ago. So it's just I managed to not have it demoed. Again, I said I managed to salvage it because they were demolishing that section of the train layout, and I was like, hey, I put a lot of time in that castle, and it's actually my brick, so I'll go grab it. So
Yeah, good one. Glad to see it together still.
right, and it just we threw it in a file cabinet here, and it's sat for many years until we had the opportunity to do something with it, which we're doing now. So. But this is a fun little thing. I mean, this is classic Japanese castle. It'd be really fun to actually put out a set of this, but lo and behold, I think it'd be very expensive.
Yes, yeah, no kidding. The instructions allow you to shop for your own bricks. I think maybe the most recognizable one though here, just for fans of current day Lego, would probably be this bad boy over here, though, huh?
This Pagoda, yeah, this is a little battered. This has seen some the test of time. It's a little bit of battle damage. So this, if you've ever been in the Brickmania store, HGHQ store, or saw our Vietnam display, there's actually one of these in that display. This one was also a part of the GMLTC layout. It needs some TLC, so I feel kind of bad looking at it, but it's a Pagoda. It's if anybody's seen the Ninjago Pagoda, very much modeled after this Pagoda.
No kidding.
And that I don't necessarily mind, but the fact that they took the whole surrounding village that I had built and basically made it into a set without telling me or giving me credit. Still to this day, kind of bothers me. But we'll let that one slide. I'm sure.
Win some, you lose some.
Right.
Ultimately, it's a sweet build.
So they can steal my Pagoda and turn it into a Ninjago set. I'll just have to retaliate with a free Blacksmith Shop.
That's awesome. Well, there you have it. That's kind of the lineup of everything that we have sitting in front of us. Everything you see here is either going to be released or has been released already on digital instructions for Medieval Month. So it's a heck of a month for brick builders in the medieval era. That's for sure. Some serious building to be done, and some large bricklink orders, I would imagine, in some people's future to be able to get all this stuff together.
These should all have parts lists. They're XML files. So you could actually just plop right into. I mean, they're in addition to the text file. You should be able to just plop this right into your Bricklink shopping cart wish list, and it'll actually populate it for you. So you'll know what you need to buy. Of course, you could have to just manually delete the things you already have. So if you want to get it, that really makes it easy. They'll tell you exactly how much it's going to cost you too. So.
Exactly.
Which none of these I know have no idea. So please stop asking how much it's going to cost for parts.
We don't control the prices on Bricklink either.
And they do fluctuate. So I imagine if you're one of like 500,000 people trying to buy the same, so it's going to make the price go up. But I honestly, I don't think that can be that much competition. These big castle buildings are very specialized. I think these releases are just for the hardcore, Brickmania collectors.
Exactly, the people who enjoy it. So this one is out today. These ones right here are already released. This one, and that one are to be released, and then we have a couple here as well, like Dan was saying, that are not up and ready yet because we don't have the physical copies of them, but they will be available on digital download. Anything else to add, Dan?
No, that's great. This is fun to revisit all this stuff, and long overdue. I think getting this old Brickmania history back out in front of people who just don't know this. I mean, most of the stuff is 20 years old. So I mean, it starts out 20 years old. I think the newest thing on here would be the Highland Keep, and even that's like what came out in 2012. So maybe the Pagoda I think is a little bit newer. So maybe 2013 with the Pagoda. So you're talking like 8 years ago when this thing came up, and then of course some of these things never were released. So.
Very, very cool. We'll check in more as Medieval Bricks continues. For now, thanks for watching.